Would you like to know how to win even when things are difficult? That's right, how to win even when things are difficult in your life. Hello friends, Denise Garrett, former firefighter and therapist and personal development coach here. And if you want to know how to win when things are difficult, like when you're really faced with a challenging situation, I hope you'll remember this. Every time you find humor in a difficult situation, you win. Every time you find humor in a difficult situation, you win. So what do I mean by that? Well, when I was a firefighter, and many people in the medical field and first responders use what's called gallows humor to cope with some of the really horrific things that we see. Military veterans have been known to do this too. And so we use gallows humor as a way to cope so that we win over the situation. In other words, it wouldn't do you any good or anyone any good if a firefighter or a medic or a doctor, emergency doctor or nurse, caved, when they saw something really traumatic. Like it just really, if they cave in and they get stuck in processing that gore, if you will, and it stops them from serving, then that's not really good for anyone. But if you can find a way to poke fun of something or to make light of something, it eases the burden that you feel, the stress that you feel, and it helps you continue to perform whatever the task is that you need to perform. So I'm not going to share some of the examples of gallows humor that I use to cope with from the fire department because it's pretty sensitive stuff and it's not really fit for your average citizen out there on the streets, not made for John Q. Public. But I'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. I'll give you one example. Like imagine stepping into a funeral parlor and there being like an animated dancing skeleton. A way to make light of a very heavy situation. So anytime you can do that, remember you win because it shifts your energy and it makes you hopefully cope in a way that you can continue to be part of the game of life rather than put on the sidelines. And one story that comes to mind when I talk about humor in difficult situations, and I'm sure you've probably heard this, it's about the man who's in a flood and he starts out on the first level and the fire department comes and says, "Hey, you need to evacuate." And he says, "No, God's got my back." And then the floodwaters keep rising and he has to go up to the second floor of his home. And then the fire and rescue, search and rescue team comes in with a boat and they say, "Hey, sir, you need to climb in the boat. We need to evacuate you." And he says, "No, God's got my back." And he goes up to the roof of the house and a helicopter comes and says, "Sir, we need to evacuate you." And he says, "No, God's got my back." And then he ends up dying and going to heaven and he says, "Hey God, what happened? I thought you had my back." And God said, "I sent you the fire department, a boat, and a helicopter. What more did you want?" So that is a mild version of gallows humor, or using humor to deal with a difficult situation. But I want to share something with you that's even more meaningful to me about how to use humor to help you, because this really helped me. You see, I had a coach, his name was Mike, and Mike shared this with me. He said, when you can poke fun of that thing that you're most worried about yourself, when you can poke fun of it, when you can make fun of it, have a sense of humor about it, lighten up about it, you become free from it. So in this case, I developed a sense of humor around this idea that I got from when I was a kid about not being enough. Like no matter what I do, it's never enough and I'm not enough and all that garbage that I made up when I was a kid. And it used to just really weigh me down and zap my joy. And the more I started to make fun of it, like, oh my God, there's that not good enough thing again. How funny is that? When you look at all the amazing things I've done. The more that I can poke fun at it, the freer and freer I get of it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that sometimes that old messaging doesn't, come up and grab me by the ankles and pull me down. But as soon as I can find a way to make light of it, I get free from it. And I want that for you, my friends. And the way to do that is to remember this. Remember that to win in a difficult situation, find the humor in it. Find the humor in it. And one of the ways you can do that is through mindfulness practices. If you're interested in learning more about mindfulness-based stress reduction practices, please check out Courageous Leadership Academy.